Aloha and welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Life After a Cult, the channel where we expose cult nonsense, laugh at the absurdity, and hopefully unbrainwash ourselves in the process. I have a really special guest for you today and topic. What do you do when the life you built suddenly isn't there anymore? I lost my partner. My guest today, who's going to come on, my friend Annette, her life completely changed after her husband had a stroke. We both had to figure out how to keep living when everything in us wanted to give up. If you've ever wondered how to survive the unimaginable, I think this is going to be a good video for you. Welcome to everybody in the live chat. And if you're on the replay, welcome as well. Feel free to jump into those comments with any questions or comments. Same thing in the live chat. I appreciate all of you being here. And if y'all could hit that like button on your way in, help us get out some notifications. That'd be great. Thank you. I want y'all to welcome Annette. Hello, Annette.
Hello, Natalie. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm
This
so
is going to be a good conversation.
Yeah, it really is. Annette and I were talking the other day. Annette and I have been friends for years. She lives in Texas. I'm here in Minnesota, but she used to live here. Our kids went to school together when they were little. And Annette went on to, and she was a certified life coach. And Annette helped me tremendously. And we've been friends since. And we were having a conversation on the phone, and I thought, Annette, we should do a video about this because I feel we are not the only women or people in this position.
No, this is for everybody who's coming in. This is going to be one of those, oh, you've just kind of stopped in for tea with us, and we're just going to shoot the bull
Exactly.
here today and all of the stuff. So, yeah, peer in on one of our conversations here because it's always interesting. And what's nice for me is that I always learn something. Sometimes it's wisdom that Natalie gives me, or it's even insight that she goes, shall I see something that I didn't see before? And so it's always fun.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I feel absolutely the same way. Now, my audience is fairly familiar, except for people maybe who are really new to my channel, with my story, where 10 months ago, my partner Tony died after a 3-year cancer battle. And But can you tell people a bit about your story and what happened that completely turned your life upside down?
So on the morning of February 27th, 2023, I get the call that nobody wants, which is it's the surprise call that it's not supposed to happen. And this one was about my husband. My husband had traveled to the middle of Colorado to go check on a property of ours. And I get a call from the EMT. So he had been found in the middle of the Airbnb, unconscious. He couldn't talk, he couldn't move, and they said that he had had a major stroke. And so from there, they transported him all the way to Denver, Colorado, which is where I ended up seeing him for the first time about 6 or 7 hours later. And that was, I didn't know if I was going to be in Denver for, a couple of weeks. And really, I got to the point where I thought, I'm going to be here for 3 or 4 months because he needed a lot of rehab. And when I showed up, he couldn't talk, he couldn't move hardly at all. So this was a major stroke, and it was super low. And so the prognosis really was is that he might be able to swallow going forward, or he might not, but definitely not balance and walk or talk. So, um, yeah, so we're going to get into that this week. And when that happened, all of life stopped. The only thing in my life was being in Denver and trying to figure out what do I do? What decisions are there to make today? And so everything went by the wayside. What I was doing professionally, relationships,
Mhm.
any activities that I was doing, I think I was probably lucky to get the bills paid. Just from even not even from a money standpoint yet, but just from remembering to do it all. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Were you in Texas when he had the stroke?
I was. I
You
was in
were going
Dallas, and he was all by himself.
And I can't recall, did you drive or did you fly?
I flew. So after I got off the phone with the EMT, I called my sister. And the thing to know about me is that I'm extremely independent. I take care of myself. I travel alone. I've driven across country. I've done a lot of things. But I called my sister and I said, I this is what's happened. I need to go to Denver and I can't figure out how to make airplane reservations.
Wow.
And so my brother-in-law actually came over and got me all sorted out, and he was like, "I can only get you into Colorado Springs." At that point, I thought I was going to Gunnison, which is about 3 or 4 hours up the mountain from Colorado Springs, Denver, 6 hours from Denver. And, he said, "I can only get you into Colorado Springs, and I'll get you a rental car too." And I was like, "Okay, good luck with me driving, but okay." So, yeah, but he had to do the whole thing. They basically just bundled me up and took me to the airport and, you know, good luck between, security and the gate.
Yeah.
But I bawled for off and on all the way to Denver. And, once you get there and you're in the middle of it, you suck it up buttercup and you just go into process mode, which is what I've done now for a couple of years. So
Yeah.
it's a tough way to live. It's
Mhm.
it's tough. Mhm.
Yeah. There's a question here from Animal Audit Corner. Did he have any bad health in the past when he had his stroke?
He was overweight at the time, but there was no indication of stroke. As a matter of fact, about 8 or 12 months earlier, we had both had a one of those calcium scans on the heart, and we're clear. I mean, it really did come out of the blue. So,
Mhm.
mhm.
That is insane. I remember
But
when that was going on. Was it 2 years ago?
it was 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago just this past February. Mhm.
Wow. And it wasn't even, I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty with this condition too. I mean, and you were handling everything.
Mhm.
So, kinda to let people know, since you said there was a possibility he wouldn't swallow, he wasn't gonna walk or talk,
Mhm.
you wanna let people know how he's doing today? And then we'll go from
So,
there. Just keep it just so
okay,
like,
we'll
"Oh my god."
we'll go to the highlights of this because, um, the only way that I can really say this is that I have truly witnessed 46 straight up miracles. And it happened from the time that he was picked up by the EMT all the way through today. Usually, when you have a stroke, they say that whatever you have at 6 months, that's all you're getting. Well, we are at 2 years, and he still continues to improve. As a matter of fact, today, he is out doing volunteer work with my dad. He drives. I think, as a matter of fact, I think he can probably handle the finances again if he wanted to, though I've never relinquished that our whole marriage, so I can't imagine that I would, um, but he's back out on his doing yard work and things like this. This did instantly retire him. His job was very it's statistics, it's forecasting, it's numbers, it's contract. It was all of that, and that wasn't part of his future once the stroke came. But I did get my husband back, which is the good side of it. I got a different version of him back, which is generally what happens with stroke.
And that's
Um,
interesting. I didn't know that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I can remember we would have conversations and he'd say something or something you would tell me that he would do, and it was just so adorable. It was just,
mhm.
I mean, he was a great guy before, but
He
it's
was.
different afterwards.
Mhm. And I think part of it is he was always a happy sort beforehand. And generally, just to give y'all perspective, typically when someone has a stroke, it changes the personality negatively. You will get somebody who's very solemn and angry and just kind of ugly and difficult to work with. And
Yeah,
that's not what I got.
no.
A couple months after the stroke, he will, and I might too. He welled up in tears and he says, "All I can remember is that when you walked in the room and you said, 'I'm here, don't worry, I'm here.'"
Oh,
And and from that place, it was really kind of a sense of gratitude that came across that was something that has persisted over the last 2 years, and I suspect it will it'll persist, for the rest of our lives. But it is an air of gratitude and then wanting to be so very engaged with
yeah,
me and
you
then with
described it.
life and yep.
I didn't know that. I think I knew it to a degree that when someone has a stroke, especially a big one, they can come back very different, but like you were saying, in a negative way. But what happened with your husband is, if I and correct me if I'm wrong, he was more attentive. He was so funny. When you guys, because you came to visit, oh my gosh, right after Tony passed,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
we had such a good time, and I just remember thinking, like, this is like your husband is like this walking miracle, and he's
Mhm.
playing that game we were playing, and he was so engaging and just really funny and has this almost, and I think I told you this, like this innocence to him.
That is something that came with this as well,
Mhm,
was that's interesting that you say that innocence because that was especially initially, it was like he was looking on the whole world like it was all brand new.
mhm.
And it was all kind of interesting and wonderful and all of that. And it wasn't that he had forgotten. As a matter of fact, his memory and his intelligence are well intact, which again is very unusual. Um, but he still struggles with a bit of aphasia, which is the whenever you see somebody who doesn't speak as clearly as they did before the stroke, that's called aphasia.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
During the time as you were going through this, and you talked about, gratitude and how he has, it seemed, so much more gratitude. What was that, or what were some of the things that helped you? Because we're talking about, like, what do you do after the worst day of your life has happened?
Ugh. You
You know,
get up every day?
how do you, how do you get up? I think that's the
Yeah.
thing that a lot of people experience, and there's even some, let me read you a couple of these comments.
Okay.
Hey, Danielle Chamberlain, good to see you. She says, "This resonates with me so much, having lost Nev in January." She lost her husband in January. "Suddenly, I'm in a haze of grief, but will need to pay bills and function. At your lowest, somehow one finds inner strength." And that, I think, is really
Mhm.
powerful. How would you describe it? Because again, I've known you for a really long time, and I
Yeah, our
remember
kids were
thinking,
little.
yeah, our kids were little. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking, if anybody can get through this, it's gonna be Annette. 'Cause
And,
you had to get him from Colorado back to Texas. I mean, it was all so much work, and at the same time, he was a primary income earner, and he's down, and you're handling everything.
mhm. And I handled as I said, I'm independent, so I handled quite a bit. The reason why he could have the job that he had was because I was at home handling everything else. I mean, I swear all of us need a wife because you get a good wife and you can do anything because they take care of everything. Um, but I would say that it is a state of being in process mode. It's pushing out every little thing and going, "Oh, yeah. Oh, I gotta go pay the Amex bill. Oh, I won't have a house if I don't pay the mortgage." And so it's like you're existing in this ocean of stuff, and you pop your head up every once in a while and you go, "Oh, I'm just gonna hover here for a second. I'm gonna get this little bit done." And then it pulls you back down. And really, I think for me, process mode is the saving grace because it pushed away all of the fears and made me very focused. Now that it also keeps me numb because I'm not thinking about how I feel or what state that I'm in or that I need to take care of me. And I've suffered quite a bit physically in the last 2 years because of because of the stress, because of the changes. When this happens, and you basically have a new partner on the other side, you wake up every day and you're like, okay, who do I get today? Because he would have his good days and then he would have his bad days. Now, his bad days weren't where he was ugly. It was that for him, it was that he was asleep. So he would sleep for days at a time, because his body was just regenerating. And he'd have a couple of really good days and he'd be on and he'd be sharp. And then he would dip again. And those waves get smaller and smaller as we go along. I still see them, but they're not like they were before. And so when you wake up thinking about somebody else and what am I getting today? It puts you straight into process mode. So I, there's always something to do. And as far as our friend who commented, it is a haze, and it's like you don't want to do anything,
Mhm.
but at the same time, those things pop up and you might say instead of, "Oh, I gotta go pay the mortgage," um, and you go do it, maybe it pops up 17 times and then you go pay the mortgage.
Mhm.
Because once it's past due, you go and do it and you go, "Oh yeah, oh shit. I gotta suck it up, buttercup, and kind of go do it." But yeah, no, you exist in that haze for a long time. And for me, it's been 2 years. For Natalie, it's been 10
10
months.
months.
10
Mhm.
months. And it's, they say that it's not like it gets better, but it's just different. One of the hardest things, especially in the first 12 to 15 months, is that, I would just cry out and go, I just want this to be normal. I just want it to be normal again. And intellectually, I knew it would never be the same, or I could never achieve my normal again.
Mhm.
But I wanted that sense of comfort and assurity, and like I knew what was going to happen tomorrow. And it's not that. It's still not that after 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
Do you think that with not being able to find that normal, and I think having that normal and consistency and the ability for us to predict is what helps us to feel stable, right? Do
mhm.
you think in not being able to have that and achieve that with everything going on because there was so much change, what did help you? Was it self-care? I mean, in the beginning, I know there was no self-care. There
There's
just
no
was no room
self-care.
for it.
You just stumble through it and go, "Ah." You just stumble through it. I think the sun comes up, you realize it's another day, and here we go again.
Mhm.
And, initially it's like, what can I do in the next minute? What can I do in the next 10 minutes? Okay, what can I do in an hour? I don't know about you, but one of the things that happened when this happened is that just about all of our relations just faded away. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had more friends who aren't friends with me anymore. We've had family do that. We've had all sorts of things happen where, not only was our day-to-day life removed, but, you know, and a lot of these people who wandered away, I think, they didn't know what to expect. They didn't want to see John in a state. I give them grace on that. It was a really tough time, but I also couldn't comfort, and I couldn't reach out. Matter
Yeah.
of fact, today, I mean, we're 2 years in, and it's hard for me to reach out and go, "Hey, listen, do you just wanna go grab a cup of coffee?"
Yeah.
It still sounds exhausting half the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, "This wasn't who I was before this. What the heck is going on?" But little by little, like, John gets better and better. I do too.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I
mhm.
relate to that completely. I'm still in that phase of it's a lot to reach out to do something, and
Oh my gosh.
fortunately, I mean, and my family. I've got a
Mhm.
great family,
They
and
don't let you go,
they
which
don't.
my core family didn't either.
Yeah. It
Mhm.
was really my family, and I was fortunate I'd been on YouTube for a little while, and we built up this community, and Tony had done a couple videos, but it was like the thing that I knew I could keep doing, and because I dropped all the other balls
Oh, yeah.
in life,
Mhm.
everything just whoosh. And the only thing that I could successfully focus on was YouTube and
Mhm.
doing my regular recap about Scientology, and for whatever reason, I could do it. It was like this break. I would wake up, never really knew how I was gonna feel when I was waking up, but then I would go right into work mode immediately upon waking up because I had to
Mhm.
do a live show at 9 o'clock, and it takes me 2 to 3 hours to produce my recap. So, it would get me busy, and then I would get going, and then I would do the show and be fine, and then I would break down afterwards. I mean, almost every single show for a long time until I realized, because I was like, "Why?" I can go on, I can do the show, and I really do feel happy and enthusiastic about what I'm talking about.
And you're present and you're
Yeah,
engaged in it.
it was the only thing that was normal, you know? And I think that, and thank goodness, because it's the only, work I was doing for a little while. I have another job I had to work on, but I didn't have to show up anywhere for it. But not having to, but coming onto YouTube each day and being committed to that made me get up in the morning. I have
Yes.
to get up because I have, 2, 3 hours of work before I even go live. And so many people in our YouTube community who just were so helpful. I heard from other women who had lost their husbands or partners, and, men too had lost their partner. And little by little, it kinda I realized, because I was asking myself, like, "Gosh, why am I just, like, completely breaking down right afterwards?" I'm like, "Is it the adrenaline rush?" And then it goes away. I'm like, "No, because 'cause I've done this a ton of times." And I realized it was because before I would do a show, and then I would immediately go talk to Tony about it.
Mhm.
He would moderate on the channel, so he knew it until he couldn't, but I would go talk to him about it. And so what I started doing, and it was one of my friends that pointed it out. It might have even been Sandy, who's here in the chat, Sandy McKenna. And she's like, "Call me after."
Mhm.
And so I started calling Sandy after. And or I would speak to other friends after I would finish a video. And little by little, more time would go between, like, I would finish and then realize I wasn't crying. And that was my first, I think one of my first, and it took months, months. My first, like, okay, you know what? I think it's very possible that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, 'cause you don't believe it. You
No.
don't believe it between there. But, the other thing I'll tell you is that you doing the YouTube was your break.
Yeah.
So when you were awake, you were in it. When you were sleeping, you were in it. But when you shifted into YouTube mode, that was your break.
Yes.
And you didn't and, you just trained yourself not to think about it, which is, part of your Scientology training
Mhm.
that, let's pull something good out of that
Yeah.
because good can come from the weirdest places. But, it allowed your brain actually to take a break
Yeah.
while you were doing that. And, that's the process mode that I call it, but it was work mode.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I took a job little a year ago November. Is that it was like I got to quit babysitting John. I need to quit babysitting him. He doesn't need me here day in and day out and it's driving me bananas. So, um I just need to take a job, and it was glorious because I didn't think about him. I didn't think about the next appointment. I went and did something that I enjoy doing that I'm good at, and and then, then you come back to reality after you come out of it. But, we all use these things as distractors, and distractors aren't always bad. They're just what we are, and we use them to protect and kind of build ourselves back up when we can't handle things.
Yeah. And you're so right about it being a break, and that's what it felt like, and many of the amazing people who watch my channel, many reached out and said, "Hey, if you need to take some time, we'll be here when you get back." And it was hard for me to explain, but that
You
wasn't gonna
couldn't.
help me. The thing
Mm-mm.
that was helping me was showing up and doing YouTube, because you can't do the show that I do with multiple clips in there and an entire, you know, I mean, it's entire like this and my notes and all of that. You can't do that unless you are really present, because there's so much to keep track of. And then you've got the live chat. And I do everything
Mhm.
on one screen. I don't have a separate monitor yet. I need to figure that out.
Yeah, you need to do that.
I do. But so it was a lot, and it was a break. I laughed, I it felt normal. And
And
that's the thing. And I'm still so thankful for it, because doing YouTube was the one thing.
kind of give you buoyancy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and a break, just give my brain a break from it and just be able to be in the moment. And then little by little, I'd have longer moments of time of not just feeling completely broken, and I could get some things
Mhm.
done, but still, like, I'm still not, I don't know how to describe it. I'm not carrying all those same balls in the air as I was before. And
Oh,
in
you
large part,
can't.
no, you can't.
Oh
And
my
also,
gosh.
a lot of it, I was in such work mode. I mean, and you know this, Annette. Like, I was working 3 jobs for 3 years to keep everything afloat,
Mhm.
and watch him, try and spend what time I could with him as he, got worse. And in that moment, like, when it was happening, I didn't think of it in terms of he's dying and I'm watching him die, because, you try this treatment, you try that treatment, you just keep trying, but he
Just
never got
keep
better.
going.
He just kept getting worse, and then at a certain point, very, very, very sick, and it was about 10 weeks from there when he passed. But in those, just about 3 years, I had no space to even, like, dwell on it too much. And then
Oh, no.
I
Uh-uh.
I would have 1, maybe 2 hours with him a day, because between work, I was gone until February of last year. Then
Well, and he was sleeping so much.
yeah, exactly, he'd be asleep. So if I
Mhm.
couldn't get home by about 4:30, I wouldn't see him at all, because he would be sleeping and he napped a lot. And so it was, just trying to, like, go, 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 and then whenever he would wake up, I would drop everything
Mhm.
just to be able to hang out with him and chat and spend that time, and then he would fall asleep, and then I'd go right back to work, because a lot of my work I could do from home.
Mhm.
And this just kept up. And, when he died, and my dad died as well, I think I spoke to you, I think, around that time, where it was April 1st last year, where I found out Tony's cancer spread to his liver, which was a death sentence. And then my dad had a massive heart attack and died. And I was also helping to take care of my dad financially. And all of a sudden, it's like everything that was going just stopped. And I remember thinking, when Tony died, that I felt like a part of me died. I felt like I totally died in a way. And I remember leaving that hospital, just, even though you knew it was coming, I knew he was dying. It still doesn't prepare you for it actually happening. And so I had, like, my sister stayed with me the first week. I spent the first week just cleaning, organizing in my pajamas. That's all.
That was your work mode.
that's my work mode. That's my
Mhm.
default. I couldn't do nonstop videos. And so I was doing that and that helped me. So I leaned into whatever it was that helped me. If it was drinking water, whatever it was that would help get me through. And I just tried to look at what was right in front of me and not think too far ahead, which
Mhm.
I think might have been your case as well, where you're like, okay, what do I need to do
Right.
right now?
Uh-huh.
What is the next thing? I can't even look at the rest of the day. And I sure as hell cannot look at the next day. Was it
Oh,
like,
no, because he wasn't there. I
no,
mean,
how
how
could
do
it
you
be
look to the
the next day?
next day?
Yeah.
My mom's got this story about when her brother died. He died of emphysema, and he basically couldn't breathe, and he had been on a tube for a couple of days, and they were like, he's just not going to make it, and then once we remove this, he's going to pass. And so very similar.
Yeah.
And she said that his wife was just screaming at him to breathe and breathe and breathe, and she said, you just don't believe that they're not going to take another breath until they don't.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that can prepare you for that, no matter how much you read, no matter how much you prepare. It's it's something that just happens. And she was like, as worldly and as my mother is, and she's very kind of soft spoken and well thought out and everything, she was like, I just was in disbelief. This isn't how this works, right? And he was the baby of the family.
Mhm.
And until it comes, and if people, ever try to tell you, oh, just prepare yourself, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. It's bullshit. And
Mhm.
you can kind of learn things, but you'll know how to walk through it when you get there, because you will figure it out.
Yeah.
I swear you will. The sun will come up again, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah. And having those breaks, that first week I was in work mode. The second
Mhm.
week, my friends Erin and Jenna came and stayed with me for a whole week. I think we barely left the house, and that was huge because those first couple of weeks, are just were not good. But it was like I at the same time, I don't think it fully hit me,
Oh no.
if that makes sense. It was like and I think because I had my sister there and my family there, and then I had Jenna and Erin with me for a week, and we were doing normal things,
Yeah,
and I
like
had a
you'd
good
normally do if they came.
yeah, and we had fun too and talked and hung out, and I feel like that bought me more space to be able to process. There's something about having people around you when you're going through the worst possible thing, and they carry it for you, and that's what I feel that so many people here on my YouTube channel did, is they carried the grief, for me. Like, I could feel them just helping hold me up, and having Aaron and Jenna there that week, it was a lot of that, and knowing like, okay, and then when I was finally then gonna be on my own, it was, that was tricky too, but ever since then, like, my sister Lana comes over once a week, maybe every other week now, and sleeps over,
Mhm.
and so I've been trying to find, doing things like that and staying connected with people and continuing to do what I do here on YouTube. And it just almost little by little, it kinda snuck in of, like, I knew he was gone, but it's so strange to not have him here that it felt like he was here, and I was surrounded by everything that was a part of him, that was a part of our life. How could he not be here? And how is it stores are still open? How are people going
Exactly.
out to eat? Tony died.
How has the world not stopped?
No, how is it not stopped? I didn't understand it. I just thought, like, I had to remember to breathe. When people say, you need to just keep breathing. I always thought, like, what are you talking about? Breathing is automatic, you psychopath.
No.
And then I would stop breathing.
Oh, yeah.
I would
Oh,
literally
no, that's a
stop
thing.
breathing and have to go.
Yeah. No,
It's
it's a
like
thing.
my body just wanted to just stop. But then when I realized that when he died, I'm like, "You know what? I did die,
There's
but
peace
then
in
I'm
doing it.
alive again."
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to get back to when I realized too that going back to normal was never going to happen. That was no longer ever gonna be.
And then you have to grieve that. Because what they don't tell you is that you're grieving the person that has left us, or in my case, who has changed. But
Yeah.
you're also grieving the life you thought you'd be walking this week.
Yes.
I mean, and that's where it shouldn't be like this. How has life for everybody else not stopped as well? It shouldn't be like this. This is not the way the rules should work. And you fight against it and you cry about it and you grieve over it and you don't even realize that's why you're so pissed.
Yeah. Oh, I went through the
Um,
anger stage too. I remember the anger stage of grief. I was pissed, and I thought that was BS too. Stages of grief. That whatever, psychopath.
whatever. I'm too intelligent for this.
No, I don't have time for
Too
stages. I
intelligent.
need to get right to healing. I gotta get back to work.
Oh my
And I
god.
remember when I went through the anger stage and I was so mad and I would out loud curse him out and just let it out.
You
And
had to.
yeah, and I had to. And that was part of it too, because I had people who had lost their people who were sharing what worked for them. I was reading books. I was hold on, I got like tears on my glasses. I was listening to podcasts, and then I would just try and take what I was learning, right? Like, okay, I'm no longer going back to my normal life. So I thought, okay, fine. That's never happening again. And in my mind, I really was just like, it all needs to die. Everything needs to die and be completely different. And I'm going to create a life for myself on top of that. And I have to thank Tony a lot for that, because leading up to his death, we had so many conversations and he would stress. He's like, you can do anything. You need, I'm so proud of how I know you're going to do. You have your YouTube audience to lean on, your friends, your family. You will do great things. And that kept playing in my head, just that I can do it over and over and over again. And then I started doing it where I didn't think I could possibly make it through life. How do you live, without the person that you were supposed to spend the rest of your life with? And at least I guess we weren't even married, but we were together till the rest of his life, which I feel is so
Absolutely.
romantic. But when I realized that I needed to build a new life, and that was okay. And that's what Tony said. You will build a new life.
Mhm.
It's going to be different, but it's going to be exactly what you want. And at the time,
Finally.
it would irritate me when he would talk about that, because I'm like, "You're talking
Mhm.
about how great it's gonna be when you're dead, and I'm here alone."
That does not sound right or
Yeah.
good.
Why are you
There's
talking
no
about that?
smiling or laughter in that.
No. But he was right. He was
Mhm.
right, and then it's like I couldn't hear those words at the time, but afterwards, I would hear it. I would hear the words. I would remember what he said and be, "Okay, I'm going to the lean into the idea of creating a new life." And
Mhm.
I immediately, like, I even switched up where I do my YouTube studio. I changed so many things. The first thing I did was change things around me physically
Mhm.
for some reason, and it was just instinct. That's just all I wanted to do was organize and clean. My house had never been so clean.
May never be again. That's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
And then I was functioning in this, like, still a daze. I mean, the brain fog was horrible. It's only now
God, that
just
goes
starting to
on
get better.
forever.
Yeah,
You
do
know
you
what?
remember that? Like, I mean, you're now having to handle everything,
Mhm.
and, I can't remember if you're in menopause or not, but I
Oh,
am.
yeah.
That
Straight.
yeah, they're telling me I have, widow's brain, and menopause brain fog. I'm like, how am I going to function at all? I need a nanny.
I told you we all need a wife.
Yeah.
We all just need a good wife. Um, yeah, no, it's okay. So I'm going to go back to what, he was preparing you for this and he was telling you all of these things. And we're talking about death and dying things. And,
Yeah.
it makes me think of my garden. I've got a huge garden out here, been harvesting asparagus like nobody's business. But what happens before everything blooms is that everything dies. And what dies creates the fertilizer from which all of the good stuff comes from later. And so if you think about that and all of the things that he prepared, he was preparing this fertilized ground for you that you then build a life on top of that now has the nutrients and strength to create what you couldn't have created without it.
That makes so much sense. And I remember because that the last several weeks of his life were really peaceful. He had come to terms with it. He knew we weren't sure how much time he had. We were hoping maybe till the end of summer. And it was actually he passed at the beginning of summer. But he was so peaceful about it and was again just preparing me for life afterwards. And I was so resistant. But you're right. I mean, he really did, and he knows that I'm very, like I like to think, be present, but I'm more forward thinking. I don't dwell a
You
lot
and
on
me
the
both.
past. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't dwell so much on that. I'm like, I wanna get on to, whatever it is I'm doing. So then when I started approaching life like, okay, it is a blank slate. I am opening a brand new box of crayons, a completely blank giant sheet of paper.
The smell of crayons and manila paper. I love that.
Yes, and it could be anything that I wanted it to be. And,
Oh, that's the other hard thing,
yeah,
though. What do you want it to be?
yeah, exactly. That was the thing that's what happened is I was like, I don't know what I want it to be
I thought
because
it was gonna be this.
I
Yeah.
thought it was gonna be this. I can't imagine a life without him, even though he tried to get me to imagine that. And then little by little, I was like, okay. I just started thinking about like the things that he would always ask me. He's the first person, Tony was the first person to ever ask me what I wanted. Down from as simple as what do you want to eat? What do you want to this? What do you want to that? He literally meant, what do you want? And it took me a long time to realize that I think that was very intentional because having grown up in Scientology and then been in the Sea Organization and then gone right into, motherhood, marriage, the whole 9 yards, it's never about what you want. It's always about taking care of the needs of other people. And that was the
Responding.
season. Yeah, that was the season of life that I was in. Well, when Tony died, the kids are grown. It's me for the first time that it's just me. And that is the thing that he kept saying. He's like, you are going to love it. He's like, I know you and you're going to love it. You are going to love being in charge of yourself and nobody else. And I'm like, what? I have spent my entire adult life taking care of other people. You're insane. I would
Mhm.
joke and tell him like, how many pain pills did you take? You're acting like my life's gonna be one big party afterwards, but he's like, "No." It was his way of I like the analogy you use. I think he was fertilizing and getting that dirt ready for me to build something different on, and when I realized I have to build something different, I
And
could
you
but
will.
it gets to be what I want.
Mhm.
So then the question became, "What do I want?" And then that threw me into a tailspin because I had no idea.
God, that's the hardest question. None of us, especially as women, usually are allowed to talk about, at least maybe it's our age. Maybe it's new with the younger crew, but it was never about what we wanted. It's all about the shoulds. Okay, to have a good life, you should, to marry well or to make money or to, make sure your kids get the right tutors or, you know, 1950s, have dinner on the table by 5 o'clock. It's all sorts of this. And so we were never raised to ask that question of ourselves. We were well practiced and even identifying what other people wanted we could almost predict it before they could say it themselves, but to internalize it was, yeah, that's so hard. Okay, I want to go back to something.
Okay.
So we're in a state, and and we're all foggy, and then we come out and we laugh and we have a good time like you were doing on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that that confused people as to how you were actually doing?
Yes.
It's like, "Oh my gosh, you're in grief. You should never laugh or cry. You should always be weepy. Shall I put on the black veil as well?"
Yeah, exactly. Should I just walk around in complete and utter 24/7 mourning, completely dressed in black, go to the grocery store with a veil?
Exactly, weeping. "I'll take a case of tissues. I got one yesterday, but I need another one today." And people don't realize it, and it was so confusing, and it was almost like, "Oh, well, you're just faking it. You're not all that upset." And it was like, "What kind of bullshit is this?"
Yeah.
It's and I think that's I really should. I talked about writing a girlfriend's guide to divorce, death, and strokes. I should really get back on that. Maybe we could enlighten people as to please show up. And yes, I know I look like a raving lunatic when I'm laughing one minute and weeping uncontrollably the next, but I'm surviving here and I'm still me. And are you going to walk through this or not? Let's just put it on the line.
Yeah.
Take
It
me as I
surprised
am.
me.
Oh, that's a good
Yeah, it surprised me. I was taken aback by that.
one.
I thought that it would be crippling grief 24/7 nonstop. For me, my experience, it wasn't. Like, I was very surprised. Like, when Aaron and Jenna were here, I think I cried in front of them maybe, like, twice,
Yeah, and it's
and
been less than 2 weeks.
but it was I was just so that's the gift of having people with you when you're struggling,
Mhm.
is they were there and they just supported me and were in the space, and that it's like I felt like I could breathe.
It's like you were seen, you weren't alone,
Yeah.
and if anything, it's almost like having somebody be there to just kinda go, "Okay, you just be. I'm here if you need me to pick it up," and they don't have to say anything, they just don't really have to do anything, but just being there, it's like, "Okay, I'm not alone. I'm not okay, I can relax and go to sleep just for a little bit because 'cause they're here."
Yeah.
And it makes all the difference. We don't need words, we don't please, God, don't fix us.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out, we promise. We
You know,
promise.
and I was forced into leaning on other people for help. Like, I
Isn't
was
that
very,
crazy?
like you, very independent, probably hyper independent,
Mhm.
and I had no choice but
Oh,
to just
no.
let it go, and for the first time in my life, I completely let go. I just let go of everything, and I'm like, "You know what? If it works out, if I wake up breathing tomorrow and I wake up breathing the next day, we'll deal with it as it comes."
And
It
that's
was
such good
amazing.
practice.
Yeah.
I think that's the goodness part of the goodness that comes out of things like this, is that we do get really focused on the here and now and what we can actually control.
Oh my gosh, yes. In a way, like, I wish there was a better way to get there to where I'm now, and how I feel about things. So much has changed for the better, but just being forced to lean on people because that was something I struggled with before, and now it's much better. I will pick up the phone if I feel
Mhm.
myself stuck. I will call somebody, I will take a walk, I will invite somebody over. I'll call Lana and like, "Hey, can you come over?" And we hang out, and it's been the people I feel like who've helped me get stronger and stronger. And God bless everybody who didn't listen to me and just checked in anyways, and even in the hospital when he was dying, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. My sister, Lana's like, "Well, should I, call the kids and the family?" And I'm like, "No, it's fine."
Oh my gosh. We are
Next
not of our right minds,
No, we
people.
were not in our right minds, and then
Now
the
you
next
can't tell us what to do,
yeah.
but showing up and just monitoring us is
Mhm.
It's a good thing.
And just do things. Just do things. Don't ask, just do it.
Oh,
The next
don't
time
make me
I
make a
went out to the
decision.
waiting room, when I went out to the waiting room, my whole family was there.
Mhm.
And that I realized, like, what was I thinking? Say, because I wanted to protect them from it. I think that's
That
what it was.
that was my biggest mistake in Denver. I was there ultimately, I was only there for 2 weeks. Then everybody said, you know, "Can I come out? Can I come out?" And I'm like, "No, mm-mm. It's fine. There's nothing for you to do." Being very practical about the entire situation, but frankly, I wasn't of my right mind. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't. My other Natalie. I've got two Natalies because Natalies are the best. Um, she was like, "Oh," she got off the phone with me one night and she said, "Yeah, I just said to myself, oh, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. If she doesn't shape up, I'm gonna have to go out there. I'm just gonna have to show up." And really looking back, I wish she would have because I didn't know. And again, you can't fix somebody who is in this situation, but if you can just be a witness to it,
Yeah.
it's huge because the the need to isolate when you feel so bad, and coming from, like Natalie and I, um, we don't wanna burden other people,
Yeah.
even in that, we don't wanna do that, but, it's like, "No, no, no, I'll just shut down and I'll see you when I feel better."
Yeah.
And it's a tough place.
Yeah. But now, having gone through more of that, I feel like I really do believe now completely that leaning on other people is the way to go.
Mhm,
That's the only thing that's gotten me through. My even like my moderators on my channel, like I knew I couldn't just not show up and disappear. I made sure that, Nancy, one of my moderators, and Mama Opal like had my family's contact info, like my sisters. And
mhm,
they ended up working together. I
mhm.
had no idea, and thank God they did. They put together a GoFundMe. I mean, it just I don't know why at some point I didn't never stop to think about how I was gonna pay for services to cremation and everything. I literally never thought about that part of it
No, well, he
until
wasn't
this day.
leaving. Why
Yeah,
would you? He wasn't leaving.
exactly. I was gonna keep him alive no matter what.
Mhm. Love will keep you alive.
Yeah. But having that support and then moving forward with it and recognizing too that, grief is a bit more like a roller coaster in my mind. And I can have days where I'm just really happy and joyful, and then 2 hours later, I'm just on the floor and expressing grief. The next big change for me came when I recognized, and I feel like this is something I learned with you when I used to work with you when you were life coaching,
Mhm.
is it kinda just hit me that, it doesn't need to be bad. Like, in
No.
other words, because what was overwhelming me, I would hear from people and they're like, "Yeah, I lost my husband 4 years ago. It's really rough." And I'm like, "It's really rough 4 years later?" I'm like, "I can't do this. It's so painful. You're telling me I'm gonna live with this pain?"
I'm
But
gonna
they'd
yeah.
explain that, it's different, it changes, right? But the realization I had is that my grief process and going and mourning and working through the loss that I will continue to do is my normal. So
Mhm.
if I'm having something happens and I'm having a rough afternoon and I'm just crying and on the floor or not on the floor or nose deep in a thing of ice cream or a carrot cake, whatever it is,
Carrot cake.
that doesn't mean something's wrong. It's of the
Yes!
process. It's actually normal for me to be doing that. So then I
Mhm.
stopped beating myself up for feeling, and that was my Scientology telling me, you're I don't think I really admitted this, that I was, a loser if I didn't just keep it together and stay strong because that's what I've always done.
Mhm.
And for the first time in my life, this just broke me. It just completely broke me. And I knew I was never going to be the same. And now I feel more like I am never going to be the same, and that is okay. And I'm going to cry at times and be on the floor, and it's going to be messy, and that's okay. That's
And it's gonna
normal.
be messy. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
normal. But I never learned how to grieve in Scientology. I never had any tools to grieve. And so this is like, I needed to figure it out. But when I realized that this is part of my new normal, and then I started telling my family and my friends that because they were, all making sure that I was still breathing. And I'd say, yeah, or if I'm kind of stuck and I call somebody, I'm like, yeah, I'm having a hard time pulling myself out of this. Let's talk. And I pull myself out of it. And I'm like, I want you to know that I'm actually fine. But I'm mourning and I'm going through grief. And sometimes I'm going to look a lot like this. And other times I'm going to be laughing and having the time of my life. And that's all part of it, and that's normal. And that took a lot of the pressure off for me to recognize that, number 1, outside of Scientology, nobody has an expectation that I'm gonna lose, my partner who I've been with for 11 years and be perfectly fine.
Mhm.
Nobody expects that of me, but if I were still in Scientology, that's what would have been expected of me.
Exactly. Mhm. Well, and you had practiced it through other things that you had grieved your time in Scientology so many times that, of course, that's the backup behavior and the backup belief, but it just is an additional beat down
Yeah,
because then you're in grief and then you beat the crap out of yourself. Yeah, that's a winner because
yeah.
that helps. Um,
And I think a lot of people do it, which is why I'm glad we're talking about this, because I
mhm.
think a lot of people go through grief or are going through grief still after a loss and probably feel the same way of like, I gotta suck it up. Everybody else has moved on. Once the funeral's done, everybody gets back to their lives, but you're
And they
like,
don't come around anymore. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, which is to be expected and, which, I guess part of that is while life is good, develop those relationships, put time in, um, and maybe even establish the rules. Hey, listen, if something bad happens to me, this is how I want you to show up for me. And that because before the heat is on, as my mother used to say, that's the better time to make a decision.
mm,
Not in the heat of the moment where you're in the hospital go, no, I'm fine.
yeah,
We don't need to do that. Yeah,
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I
Mhm,
started little by little too. I remember, and somebody had asked in the comments earlier if it's getting easier at the post office. I haven't cried at the post office for a few months now because I would go, it was the strangest places. Like, why? But it was my routine. Go to the P.O. box, go to the bank, go home to Tony.
mhm,
And I think it was really leaving the house. It was,
mhm,
I still cry when I leave the house or if I'm coming home, not as often.
mhm,
I mean, for a while, I just dreaded, like, I just didn't wanna leave the house because every
mm-mm,
time I left the house, I would cry, whether it was the hardware store, the post office, the bank. God forbid somebody asked me a question. I was at a store, I think it was a hardware store, and the account was under Tony's name, and I couldn't even bring myself to say his name because I knew if I did, I was about to lose it in the hardware store, and shortly after that, I realized, you know what? I'm just gonna let people know. So, like, another time when I went, because I had mice show up, which freaked me out because something Tony always took care of. And, I told the guy at the store what was happening, and I realized I had so much anxiety over telling people that he died, that the buildup, the worry that I was gonna be out in public and have to say he died would just send me over the edge.
mhm,
But what I ended up finding is 99.99% of people were perfectly fine with it and
mhm.
were able to empathize, and even friends and family came to understand when I would say, "I am okay, but I have moments where I'm not okay, and I'm crying, but that's part of my
And
process."
I'm still okay when I'm not okay.
Yeah, I'm still like, I know I'm gonna be fine. There was a
Mhm.
time for a while where I didn't know that, and I didn't know I was afraid to, like, really grieve because I was so afraid, that I wouldn't come back from that, that I'm just gonna cry so hard if I let myself. Because remember, I grew up in Scientology. I know how to compartmentalize my emotions if I want to, but I couldn't even if I wanted to. And part of that process, it just broke me down even more, but what I recognize today is it broke down the things that were not serving me, and it was making room for the things that were, that would, the tools I could use, the relationships, the friendships.
Mhm.
Then it started to make more sense.
Well, and we're back to that clean slate again.
Yeah.
It is shocking what I've walked away from, the people that I've walked away from, and done it without guilt. I mean, guilt kind of meant that there were all sorts of things in my life that really shouldn't have been there, but were because, oh, well, I might disappoint somebody, or, in the good life, you're supposed to have that. You're supposed to do whatever. And to be so broken that you walk away from it without guilt probably means that it shouldn't have been there in the first place. So I literally think like a piece of gray slate that's completely devoid of anything except for that tile, that piece of
Mhm.
slate tile. And slowly but surely taking things and going, okay, well, you can come and live on my slate for a little bit, and we'll see if you get permanent glue.
Yeah.
But there's no, we'll see what works now. But it's been a good practice because life on this side it's more me. It's definitely more me
Yeah.
than the pretzels I was twisting myself into and that I had for over 50 years of my life.
I agree with you completely on that, just completely. There's something about just being in your 50s, I think, especially as a female,
I
that's
love my
that's very
50s.
very freeing in a lot of ways. You just stop
Mhm.
giving a shit about a lot.
Well, I'm so freaking tired.
I'm
I can't do
exhausted, I
it.
can't deal with your BS, I'm
Yeah.
tired. So I'm just not going to. But it's like having with things changing, even people who I'd spend time with, I mean, like in my local community in Excelsior, I was very involved. I
You
knew
know
ev
everybody.
exactly. I knew everybody. And suddenly, I couldn't even bring myself to go there. I would just go to the post office and leave. I've still not really gone to any of the events or things that I did before, and I felt like I have these 2 separate lives. I have this life on YouTube in this community
Mhm,
with people, and then in my day-to-day life here, I realize I'm still not engaged. I'm still not. In fact, I heard, Connie from Ooh La La in Excelsior.
mhm.
I heard from Connie and she's like, "Yeah, I've not seen you around town." I'm like, "Yeah, because I haven't been." But I told her, I said, "But I wanna be." I'm starting to realize, like, okay, it's time to, kinda, like, immerse myself again and get back connected locally, right?
Mhm.
But in the way that I choose it to be, and doing the things that I actually care about. And I just feel like, death and loss, it just puts so many things in perspective where suddenly the clock is ticking and I go, I'm 54. My mother died when she was 59.
Mhm.
And I look at that and I'm like, okay, that is not my plan. And she had health issues that I don't have. I plan on living well into my 90s. And I thought, okay, so let's say I have 40 years. How do I want to spend those 40 years? And 40 years sounds like a long time when you're 5, but when you're 54, 40 years doesn't sound like a super long time. So I
Mhm.
started realizing that I want my time to count. I want to do things that matter to me or to other people. I just I just have no desire for a lot of the, like you were saying, like the shoulds, right? If I want to sit in my backyard or go take a walk in my robe, I'm doing it. And It's like, because at least then I'll get out, because I'm like, okay, getting dressed was too much, but I was willing to go out in my robe and my pajamas. So I would just do that.
Mhm.
And the neighbors, I think, are happy that I get dressed now. There's still times if I want to walk over to the neighbors, like I will full blown just walk out there in, in my robe. Just certain things I'm just like, no, I'm the fact that I'm willing to speak to someone and communicate and made my own coffee today. I started taking the wins, the things that I was doing. Yeah, let's tell me about that for you.
Oh, yeah. Frankly, nothing comes to mind, but oh yeah, yesterday. Oh my gosh. So it's the first time I felt like this. I love to drive, and I was actually on my way to a real estate CE course, which I don't know if any of you have to take CE courses for whatever you are into. Um, it's it's kind of a drudgery,
Yeah.
a lot of times. But the right song came on and the endorphins hit, and you get that high of just like, oh my God, this is a great day. And you're all sparkly, and I was like, I have not felt this in so long. And I just reveled in the fact that it happened, and it was part of that taking the win. I couldn't tell you exactly why it happened, but it's like the stars aligned. And, for that 20 minutes or so as I walked in to take my class, it was like, I was walking on sunshine, as she says. And it was amazing. And or yeah, I guess another thing is when I do something really, really well. I started one of my things that I've done the last couple of months is that I've started a new company because I worked for a company that I did something really, really well, and I would say to people, "And I'm really good at it." And it really wasn't out of vanity, but more of, "Oh my gosh, I realized there's
Right.
something I'm really good at." And it's the realization and then acknowledging it, and again, it's taking the win as it sits and just in and of itself. So
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. There's a couple of questions and comments here I'm gonna share with you. Daniel Chamberlain says, "That's why I'm so mad." So she's a former Scientologist and she lost her husband in January. "That's why I'm so mad at Scientology, because they pulled my mom from hospital when she had a stroke before she had any medical intervention." Yeah, that would be a game changer. And Selena says, "When my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, her decline happened really fast."
and it's not supposed to. I mean, these people are supposed to treat each other with honor and care, and take care of you if you had a stroke or
Yeah.
um yeah. And yeah, it's so unexpected, and you just, as we said, if you feel like maybe I should have better prepared for it, or maybe I should have done something different, no, you couldn't have. I
Yeah.
swear to you, that was the thing about my life coach training, is that everything that has happened even thus far today, frankly, is the best you could have done today. Now, if you get through today and you go, "Oh, I didn't like how that turned out or those consequences," then tomorrow, if the same thing pops up, then you make a change. But as of right now, however you faced it, however, you walked through it, that was your way. That was your right way to walk through it. And
And it
just
is
love
different.
yourself. Just love
Yeah.
yourself.
It's different from person to person. What's right and works for me might not be right or work for someone else.
Hmm.
And just letting go of all that judgment. Nancy Stidgen, it's amazing what isn't a priority or even necessary when we're thrust into life-changing events like this. And that is so right, Nancy. And thanks to Nancy, my neighbors don't have to watch me in my old robe anymore. I've been putting on my Amazon wish list things that I want that I know I'm not going to buy for myself, but I want it. And Nancy, one of the things she got me was the wearable blanket. I live in it now. I cannot wait to get into it each day, and I do wear it outside.
Well, it is Minnesota. There are
It
plenty
is
of cold
Minnesota.
days, and even in the summer, it can be like 40 degrees out there.
Oh, exactly, in the early.
Sorry, I only say that when I'm back up there, but there you go.
Anna from Canada says, I saved my dad's life many times as a child. He was a type 1 diabetic. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy says also, a friend had a parent die suddenly and one die after an illness, which was easier. Impact was the same, like being hit by a train. The difference in one scenario, you see the train coming. Well said, Nancy. And I've asked myself that in the many thoughts that I've had is like, what would have been worse? And I have so much gratitude for the time I had with him at the end because of the conversations we were able to have. And I would encourage everybody to have the conversations with people you love and you care about now, because everything can change in just a moment. And that sounds so cliche, but it's so true. But if you know you said everything you wanted to say, you expressed the love that you felt, and you know they received it, then no matter what happens, it's, you know, it's you're in a you're in a better place then.
You've lived a better life.
Mhm.
Because if you live your life in a place of love and, and hearing the stories and honoring who people are in the moment, you really get better connection on the back end than if, I'll just put it off till tomorrow.
Yeah. And leaning into gratitude was another really big tool for me. And it's something I didn't want to do in the beginning. I was like,
Mhm.
gratitude, go F yourself.
Well, that's Scientology's way. What have you done for me lately? Come on.
Exactly. What have you done? But little by little, I realized when I was looking back on these things, like the time that I had with him, I can look at the last 3 years and go, well, I watched him die. Or I can look at the last 3 years, and this is also true. I had every conversation I wanted to have with him that I could think of, asking him questions, even talking about his death. When I'd ask him, are you afraid at all? How do you feel about it? And he said he wasn't afraid. He was curious about what was going to happen next. And he was kind of excited to find out. And I
I need
thought,
those details. So go ahead, bring them
yeah,
out.
I
Bring them
thought,
out, Tony.
I thought that if Tony could approach death like that, I'm excited to find out what happens next. And I
Mhm.
realize, why can't I approach my life like that? I'm excited to find out what happens next. And then I started adopting that as like a real state, like a I can only think of a Scientology word to explain it, stable datum. So like is like my what would like
Your
so a
core value, core belief.
yeah, maybe a stable datum in Scientology is when there's all this confusion going around and you pick one thing and then everything kind of aligns around it.
Oh, cool.
But I know there's a word for that that's not a Scientology thing. I just don't know what it is. Somebody put it in the chat if you think of it. But I realized that that was, you know, some of those new, and they were new values. Like I realized how I have less care for a lot of things. Like it takes a lot to bother me. And there's a lot that goes on that I just don't care about, but it's not an apathetic I don't care, because I worried
No.
about that and I had to figure out the difference.
Mhm.
How would you describe it? It's not an apathetic I don't care about that, or even I don't have time for that. It's just I
Mm-mm.
realized, wow, look at that over there. Not in my control at all.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm focused on what I'm doing because all I can control is me.
Exactly, and it's giving it space and acknowledging that whatever it is over there, and it can is very well be a thing or a circumstance or an ugly person or, whatever it is. And realizing that there are no rules. You don't have to engage. You can just allow it to be without fighting against it being what it is.
Yes.
And I think it's the fight that gives all of that power because
Yeah.
if you think about, no, it shouldn't be that way, or they shouldn't act like that, or it just gives power to the whole thing and ultimately perpetuates it. Whereas if you go, yeah, see you. I'm gonna go play in my own sandbox over here. You really can do this, and I'm not going to try and change you.
Yeah.
I'm going to really and, sometimes it's out of an abundance of love. You know what? I really do love you, and I know I can't change you, and if I try to, it's gonna hurt you, it's gonna hurt so I'm going to love you, and I'm going to allow you to be, but in order for me to do that, I've got to move on. I've got to go someplace else. Even if it's at Christmas dinner, it's in your own head. You
Yeah.
have to go someplace else.
Mhm. Yeah, there's something freeing about that whole thing and realizing because I thought, you know what? I dropped so many balls. I let go of so much control in life, and yet somehow things are going along and somehow things are coming together. And when I need something, it shows up. And so I've just like leaned into that whatever I need, one way or another, it's going to show up. Because I mean, like I've not gone back to doing real estate. I have my brokerage, but I'm not doing individual deals. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I'm just
Mm-mm.
not up to handling that. And so between YouTube and I have another part-time job in land development that I can do from home, it's like given me some space. I've had to adjust because my income is completely changed. But I don't know, there's something about it that's just made everything more simple, and I think when I think about rebuilding my new life, I've had to ask myself what I value, and I don't value what I valued before. Some of it, I don't think of it that way. I'm more I'm like, "Okay, if I'm gonna be right now, I just have myself to think of. I don't have children I'm taking care of. I don't have a partner that I'm accountable to or taking care of." And it feels strange still to know, like, break certain habits. Like, why do I always buy that same thing? That's something that maybe like like here, something stupid. Tony preferred Listerine, I preferred Scope. Seemed like a waste to buy both. So I sucked it up for 11 years. Just use the Listerine. Well, I'm buying the Scope now.
Mhm.
And that's not a huge thing, but it's like looking at that and then going, "Okay, I'm so grateful that I get to make these choices for myself." And it's also combating my Scientology upbringing, which was always about serving the group and being productive and not self-care, not thinking about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's always on the paradigm of you're not doing enough. If you're not dead or dying, you're not doing enough.
Yes.
Mhm.
That is
There's always
exactly.
more you could do, so do it. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Mhm.
So that's why you wear your bathrobe outside. Good job.
That's right, or my wearable blanket. I'm like, "It's comfortable." I have this Adirondack chair. I pull it into the middle of the yard. This is something I never would have done before Tony died. In the middle of my yard, in my wearable blanket, and I will sit out we have legalization of cannabis in Minnesota, so just so you guys know that. Smoke a joint right there. I never would have done that before. I'm like, "I wanna be outside," or just, the simplest things that I'm like, I'm questioning everything. Why am I doing this one thing? Am I doing it because I enjoy it, or is it a should? You know what I'm saying? I've been really separating out all the shoulds. You should versus is that actually important to me? I realize I'm not, and when you're older, it's different. I was in my 20s and it was like you're looking for a partner and building a life. And I've never had any time in my adult life where it's been only me. I had children or was married or had a partner. And those were beautiful times. But now I'm discovering life as an empty nester who's single. And I only need to think about myself for the very first time in my life. And I'm realizing now, like, oh my God, Tony was right. I do love it. He knew me so well and I couldn't see it and I didn't want to talk about it. And he kept saying, "You're gonna do great and you're gonna love it. You've spent your whole adult life taking care of other people."
So I just want to point this out for you to reflect on is that he even knew he had to go in order for you to be the best person you could be. And he got you along the way, but yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. 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 I think he knew that too. And I'm so grateful for that. And like I said, that time, even though he was, getting sicker and sicker over that time, I'm still grateful for that time. And when I started realizing that and realizing that if I was struggling, I could look around and be like, "Okay, you know what? I am so grateful that I live in a community that I love, that I'm safe, that I have people I can call." There's a lot that I don't have anymore, but I'm finding that I have a lot more than I thought I did, because it's not the things, it's it's like it's the experience, it's the people. And I feel so thankful and so much gratitude for so many people. And you can't feel have your heart filled with gratitude and be on the ground crying at the same time.
Typically doesn't happen.
Yeah,
You have
after
to roll over one way for one and roll over the other way for the other.
exactly. And like I was saying earlier, I was so terrified of my emotions because they were so strong after Tony died.
Mhm.
And I'd never got to really experience them, because even before, in Scientology, we just had to compartmentalize it. And
And emotions bad. Emotions bad.
emotions are bad. Emotions will get you in trouble. That's Emotions interfere with your ability to be productive. Therefore, they should play no role. And I've not done
Baloney.
that through this.
Yeah,
I just let it come when it comes. And
that's
it's
a really good
amazing.
lesson.
Yeah, and again, it took me a while to let myself really grieve, because I would always stop myself from going too far, because I'd never been that far. Have you like I've never been that deep in grief
Mhm.
and pain. And that's
Well,
saying a lot, considering my life before, which you know a lot about. I've
mhm.
been through a lot of very traumatic events, but none of them caused the level of pain that I live with now.
And it's a weird kind of pain.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about it before, because if you had not loved as deeply as you did, if you had not connected as deeply as you did, you would not be in this season of grief and pain that you are.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a bittersweet season of life, because one definitely impacts the abundance of the other.
Yeah, it really does.
Mhm.
And again, it would have been nice to kind of come to these realizations in a way that didn't involve that much pain, but maybe that's why, like you're saying,
Mhm.
because we love so deep, the pain so deep, and allowing myself to really feel that pain. I remember the day when I let go and was like, "Okay, let's do it." We're gonna
We are going to cry in public.
I'm not going to push it down. I remember the day, because I actually always at home, and I was still afraid that I wouldn't be able to pull myself out of it, but I did it, I felt it, I embraced it, and I came out of it. So then the next time it would happen and I would feel that overwhelming grief, I would just surrender to it, and I would feel it, and I would experience it, and it just moved through me, and I could let it go. And each time I would do that, it's like the steam in a teapot. You just let it out, and then it's like, "Okay, I can work, I can get some things done." And that's what made it easier, and I don't think I could have done that without largely, like, my YouTube community. Like, I've gone on and done videos talking about Tony and doing the ugly Oprah cry, and I hate it. I never start the video out crying. I think I'm gonna be fine. I can talk about this and make it through it without crying, and every single time it's like, "No." And I've just been able to let that go, and that's huge for me, because letting people it's such a vulnerable place to be in, to let people see that pain.
So, question, why were you finally able to let it go? What did you think, or what state were you in where you finally just released it?
You mean when I let myself experience it?
Mhm. And allowed it to be deep and potentially you couldn't recover from it.
Because I felt like I just had this feeling that if I didn't, that it was gonna manifest another way, and it wasn't gonna be good for me. It
So,
wasn't
if
gonna be healthy for me.
in what way? So, go down that rabbit trail just a little bit.
So, for example, like, I remember thinking that, I have autoimmune disease and a functional neurology issue, and that's all from shoving shit down and my time in Scientology. And I was thinking, like, I don't wanna make myself sick. I don't wanna make
Oh,
myself
yeah.
mentally or physically sick.
And physically is a real thing that happens to you.
Very much so, because stress triggers, my muscle spasms, and it's just like this whole thing. And I've done a lot of work to rewire my brain to help with the neurological stuff, but it's still something that I deal with. And I was so afraid that if I let myself go and just let the pain come and experience it, that I would make myself super sick. But
So
then
it would be worse.
it would be worse. And I think ultimately it came down to I've not tried this before, just really leaning into it.
Mhm.
And if I do, one of two things are going to happen. I'm going to die or I'm going to come out of it. Like literally, it was like, I mean, not in a self-harm way, in like, there's no way my heart can take it, you know?
It'll just stop.
Yeah, I remember thinking that. I thought, if I give in to this grief and this pain, I will stop breathing. There's no way I can take it. And
Mhm.
with the first day that I let that go and I did it, and it was so gut-wrenching, and I not a loud crier because I've never lived by myself. So I always cried in the shower.
We don't wanna burden others, people. We
Not a
don't
burden
wanna burden
people.
others.
But Kelsey was home and I just let it go and I decided if it kills me or I'm gonna come out of it. But all I know is this is the path I've not tried of actually experiencing and processing my emotions when it's painful.
Mhm,
So I'm gonna try it because nothing else was working.
mhm.
And when I started letting myself feel the full weight of that pain and that loss and that grief, when when I would get through it, I felt lighter, I was happier, and I went, "Oh my god, I think I just found the magic potion for grief."
Mhm.
And it's give into it. But don't let yourself get stuck there. So there have been times where I've given into it and hours go by but then when I start feeling overwhelmed by it, then I'll call a friend, go for a walk, see a family member.
Yeah,
And
you have to have a decision made ahead of time
yes.
and a trigger that you will actually adhere to. So
Yes.
one that you will actually do, something that is such a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and that was it. And fortunately too, it's like being on YouTube, it's not just my YouTube community, like people on my channel who watch, it's my other friends who are creators who, like I can't no one's gonna let me disappear, and that is a good thing. Because I felt like that is ultimately what I needed. I don't need you to hold my hand the whole time, but I need there to at least be a string. And
Mhm.
if you don't feel anything on the other end and it doesn't seem like I'm there, and that's where my friends have come in. Yeah, where they reach out and go like I think about like a couple of times, I forget what happened, but I was like canceled a video or something. And then like Aaron would call me and be like, "Hey,
Uh-huh.
what's going on? How are you doing?" And I don't have to BS with him. I can just tell him like it is. And it's a
Or not
simple
say anything, which
yeah,
is the greatest thing.
yeah,
"Thanks for
exactly.
seeing me."
And those same people would still be there. I know that I can call Sandy and I can call Jenna and they check on me too. And we check on each other. And then I started having like even I was leaning like opening more up to the friends I was making, like my moderators who have just been there so much for me and put up with so much of my BS at times as I was going through it and who love me anyways and have learned how to, how to speak Natalie, and approach me on certain things so like I can hear it and understand it. And at the same time, when I've had to say, "Hey, I'm like we're going live in 5 minutes. Don't ask me how I'm doing," because that one question will set me off. And there
Mhm.
was a period of time where I would sit down to go do a live stream and my moderator Nancy would be in the back end to start questions, which means in StreamYard we can see each other. So I would chat with her beforehand and there was a good chunk of time where I said, okay, it was even before Tony died. I said, when we sit down and before I do the show, I need you to not ask me how I'm doing. I need you
Mhm.
to act like everything is fine. And then I will
Mhm.
tell you after. Because
Right.
I couldn't talk about it and not get all upset. And God bless her. She was just like, that's exactly what she did. And then afterwards, I would tell her what was going on and all of that. And I just started getting stronger and stronger, and I still have, like I said, those moments of grief and all of that, but I feel I've been able to take that pain and turn that energy into something else. Take all the love that I had for Tony, and I'm putting it back into myself, which is also something I've never done before. The way that he loved me, because I realized, what was I missing? It was like he made things so special. So I started doing things that he used to do for me. Like, I would go turn down my bed, get my tuberose spray
Yeah.
and spray the bed, get my fans and the lighting just right. And then whenever I went to bed later, it was there and it was all set. And that's the stuff that Tony would do for me. These little things that made everything special. He would just elevate it just a little bit. And when I started doing that for myself, I was like, "Oh my God, is this what self-care is? Is this what they mean?"
Yes.
There's
It's not just going for a massage.
Nancy's here now. Lists, lists, lists. Yeah, I made tons of lists. Sandy McKenna says, surviving grief doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means you've built a life big enough to hold both sorrow and joy. Sandy, that is the perfect way of explaining it. And Sandy lost her daughter some years ago in a car accident. And I remember, and I've told Sandy this, I'm like, and Sandy also lost her mom, I think that same year, within a couple months of her daughter. So just like me with my dad and Tony. And I've told Sandy, I'm like, you are like my hope out there, because you are walking around happy, helping people, finding joy, doing things. And if you can do that, then I'm like, I can do that. There's hope that I can do that. What have you found things like that where it's like you realize, I don't know if you've had other people like that in your life, or you just been bootstrapping it, but
It's a little bit of both,
yeah,
just the way that we are. Um, but yeah, from both perspectives. So you started off by saying, helping others, being happy, that sort of thing.
yeah,
One of the things that there's a speaker that I listen to, and she's like, when you feel really, really bad and you can't come out of your own thing, go help somebody else in the meantime.
yeah,
Use that as your distraction or whatever, because giving to others gives to yourself.
yeah,
And it just kind of multiplies. Um, but it's also leaning leaning into others' stories and
yeah,
seeing that they've made something out of their experience. And now it really helps me understand why, people set up these foundations after they've lost a child or a parent or a spouse, and to study a a cancer or whatever it is.
mhm,
And that's their version of giving back. And again, watching them go through it it provides a candle of hope that, oh, they did it, maybe I can too.
yeah,
And that little bit of maybe I can is going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. How do you get up every day and how do you face the new day? And it's like, well, if you can just start off with maybe I can.
yeah,
Okay, that's good enough.
yeah.
Mhm,
Just the possibility.
mhm.
And I think you're right. And the, when I think about the other things that help too, letting go of trying to control the outcome of so many things. I mean, I was kind of already getting there when I was about 50,
Yeah,
but
but
I was
this
like,
is different.
yeah, it's different. It's just, I'm like, I don't have the wherewithal, the energy, or the desire to fix this over here. And it's not my monkey, not my circus,
I
anyways.
love that.
So
Mhm.
why I'm not going to give it the energy of being upset about it when it doesn't actually affect me. It's like getting upset over characters in a show I'm watching and then being all upset about whatever they're doing. It's like it's outside of my control. What's within my control is pretty much only me. Like, you would always say when we talk, it's you can't control the people.
Can't control the people.
And that was a big thing too, is like I can't control the people, but wow, it's crazy that I can control how I show up. And I don't need to be upset because someone else is upset. I don't need to be happy because somebody else is happy.
And you can be happy on your YouTube channel and still be in the depths of grief. And
Yeah.
it's okay and it's normal.
Yeah.
And it's all the right way to go through it.
Yeah. And it's that break, like you were saying. But
Mhm.
I know, like, um, yeah, I just leaned so much too on the time, like when you were doing life coaching and we were working together. Like I hear your voice all the time. Why does it have to be bad? Or,
Does it
and
hurt me?
yeah, exactly. And having those tools, and even like with cognitive behavioral therapy, where it's really all too about reframing and looking at things because we tend to look at something and then you get stuck in just one way. Like I said, I can look back and go, well, I spent 3 years watching the man I love die. That is true. But I also
Actually,
spent, but
yeah.
I also, yeah, but I also spent 3 years creating memories with the man I love, having conversations about things
Getting
that we wouldn't
closer.
necessarily have talked about. Yeah, getting closer. So, there's just always another way to look at it, and they're both true. But which one do I want to lean into? I think about it almost like it's like, which timeline do I want to experience?
Mhm.
It's this. And that's just what I try to do now is, I don't there's still so much that I feel like I've still dropped so many balls, but I know that, like with YouTube, it's kind of like a machine, right? I have it set up and my routine and what to do and it's just coming up with like when I'm doing different videos and then I'm starting to figure out other things too. And I feel like you are too. Like you're 2 years out, I'm 10 months out and
Mhm.
I think it's interesting. It's nothing like what I thought it would be,
Mhm.
which I think is
Yeah.
actually a good thing.
Yeah, the one thing that I wish I would have done, like, early on, and I tried while I was in the hospital, like, in Colorado, was to find a support group.
Yeah.
Because it was like you said before, these ladies and these gentlemen who have helped you and go, "This is how it was for me." It can, just knowing that. I think that's the biggest mistake that I've made over the last 2 years, is that I have not gotten involved in a support group where, I can see those, "Oh, you survived to this, so maybe I can too."
Yeah.
Or, being a blessing to other people and lifting yourself up out of whatever the day brings just because you've helped somebody else. So that would be one of my biggest suggestions, and find the support group that works for you. Not all of them are your people,
Yeah.
but look around.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull some of these comments up. Sandy also says, "Surviving grief doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means you've built a life." Oh, wait, no, I read that one already. I
I
love
like it. It's worth a second one.
a good one. Robin Miner says, "One of the best quotes I've ever heard is, 'We have to need to find order. We have a need to find order, consistency, and predictability in a world where there is none.'" Robin, that is so true. And there's something magical about I got to the point and I decided I'm staying here because I thought, well, at one point I'll get back to trying to like control the world. And then I was like, or not. I can only control me. That's the only thing I'm going to try and control. Like that's all I have control over. I can participate, I can contribute, I can do different things, but that's very true. We seek that order and consistency and predictability, but I found I got freedom in getting comfortable in not having predictability, being curious with the unknown. And that again goes back to what Tony said. He faced death with an attitude of, I'm excited to find out what comes next. And I decided to adopt that. And if I couldn't be excited, I was at least curious as to what comes next. And that's kind of how I've done it. And it's like constant, still trying to not, still like take more than I can chew, because that again is some of my Scientology background.
Hmm.
Spirit Reaver says, "Yes, exactly. I know when mom died, I was so angry at the world because it didn't stop. How could a world exist without mom? How can it?"
Hmm.
Oh, I totally
Well,
believe
of
that.
course.
It
Yeah.
is weird. Valhalla says, "Y'all have me out here mowing my lawn, tearing up, trying not to cry so my neighbors don't think anything tragic has happened over here. I do appreciate y'all having this conversation."
And I appreciate the y'all. You just
Yeah,
keep on bringing it.
that's right. Satan. I just
Mhm.
love this name so much. I've nearly I've nearly caught up on this video. Natalie, your candid conversations about grieving have really helped me with my recent grief. I thank you so much for this. Oh, I appreciate that. And I heard from so many people when I talk about it, because then I get into this, sometimes I think like, well, I don't want to bum everybody out. But
Again, don't wanna be a burden. Don't
no, but it's inauthentic if I'm not talking about it and sharing about it because it's what I'm really going through.
Well, and if they view it, let's hold on just a second. If they view us as a burden, that's their deal, not us, because
That's
we
true.
can't control the people.
That is very,
Okay, continue on, I'm sorry.
yes. Let's see. Linda Lou says, "Stop shitting on yourself." My
It's hard
therapist
to
has
do
removed
that.
"should" from my vocabulary.
Well, congratulations, Linda Lou. You should have a huge party because that should is hard to kick out.
That is
So hard.
hard. I feel like it takes, especially with women, it takes us a
Mhm.
lot longer, I think, to get there. Sharon Keogh says, "When my younger brother died at 35, he said, 'Dying is easy. It's living that's hard.'"
I agree.
I get that. I used
Mhm.
to tell Tony that. I'd tease him like, "You have the easy part. I have to be here afterwards." And then I think in
Mhm.
my head, "What are you doing? You were arguing with a man who's dying about who has it worse." But then he agreed.
Exactly.
He's like,
Honey,
"Oh, yeah, totally." He's like, "I don't wanna be in your shoes."
life is not for the faint of the heart. I mean, let's be real. Life is hard. There are things that come at us all the time that frankly none of us would have planned. None of us requested would come in, and
Mm,
yet here it is and we still choose to walk the earth. Yeah, somehow we do.
yeah, and I am getting myself a medal for it, that's the thing. That's what I mean by, like, taking those wins, like when I traveled for the first time, doing
I was
things
so
for the
proud of
first time.
you.
Yeah. Getting through all of the holidays. It'll be 1 year, June 10th, and I feel like I have no idea what it'll be like on that day, but today I view it as almost like not celebrating that he died, but celebrating that I made it, that
Mhm.
I made it a year, because I didn't think it was possible.
Mhm.
And now it's 10 months later, and I'm realizing it's possible, and I feel like I've passed that threshold of not being sure I was gonna make it to knowing I'm going to survive this, and I'm not just gonna survive, but eventually I'm gonna thrive,
Mhm.
not just get by, but really live and enjoy and experience and love and all of those things.
Mhm.
And I think it's so crazy that, Tony saw it so clearly before he died. He had such a peace about it. He said the biggest thing that bothered him was leaving me and the boys
Mhm.
and
Of
not
course.
being there physically for what was to come, because he knew that we would go and we'd be happy and, event and just like live life. And I thought that is such a gift. He was a cheerleader like that till the end. It was always
Mhm.
about me and the boys, not so much about him, which was amazing.
I know. I remember we were sitting in your living room talking about him and the ukulele fell off the mantle. I was like, "Oh, there he is."
That's right.
Like
I
he
forgot
he
about that.
jumped into the whole conversation.
Yeah.
And we were talking about something fun. It wasn't sad. It's like he was jumping into the conversation.
Yeah, that's the
Mhm.
funny thing. Those are a lot of times when something is really funny or I'm doing something like that's I feel like when he pops in, I've had
Mhm.
things happen with his guitars and stuff, and it's almost like this little like I can
Here I
feel
am.
him cheering me on. He was like my hype man.
Mhm.
Every day he encouraged me to, do YouTube and keep doing it. And, he thought I hung the moon. I'm like, everybody needs a person like that. And when I
That
was
should
really
be your bar for a partner.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That and a lot of other things, including I'm
Mm.
gonna need to see a full physical, some blood work. When's the last time you had a mental health evaluation? Like,
Yes.
I need to know.
I might need your whole family history back to the 300s. That
Exactly, because
just
'cause I'm not
the
doing this
300s, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not doing this again. I've already let my family know. I am the oldest. No one will die before me. I have called it. We're not doing this.
Mm-mm. You're done. Thank you very little. So there
I'm
you go.
doing the Swedish death cleaning now too, where you, like, go through everything of your stuff,
Mhm.
and then, like, if it's not something that you think, like, your family's actually gonna enjoy, like, why are you keeping it? We've gotten
Mhm.
rid of so much stuff. That's been cathartic too, I think.
Oh, yeah. Just clears out the brain.
That's right. Don Glove says, "Yeah, full body scan results. I'm gonna need that. I'm gonna need to know."
It's amazing how our standards have changed as we get older.
I
Mhm.
know. What's funny is I used to always joke that because Tony, I'm 9 months older than him, 9 months older than him. And I'm like, "You're the youngest man I've ever been with." Like, I've always been with men older than me. And now I'm like, "Oh my gosh, if I consider it, I'm gonna have to date somebody who's like 35 to guarantee I die first."
Well, that and you know what? I think it's a plan. Get somebody who can take care of you on your way out.
Yeah, it's solid.
Uh-huh, it's a solid plan. That's why all those older men marry those younger girls, 'cause
They can take care of them.
exactly.
I wanna do like a Golden Girls type thing, maybe like a tiny home village, and we can have a community area and just
Except
take
we're
care
gonna
of
be in
each other
Hawaii.
in
So we're
Hawaii.
yes.
Yeah.
Florida was great for them, but I think we're gonna upgrade to Hawaii. Gonna go
Yeah,
see your
Florida's too
family.
hot. Well, we should wrap up because I didn't even realize we've gone this long. That was a
Thanks,
lot.
guys, for sticking with us.
Yes. Linda Lou, yes, that does sound exhausting, doesn't it? Well, thank you so much, Annette. I really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation. Candace is gonna join us in our tiny home community too. Sandy's
Welcome.
in. We just need to build it for, when people who I guess you could have a partner or not have a partner, but the idea is
Either
just
way.
a village and we can support each other.
Mhm.
All right, everybody else, if you could hit that like for me on your way out and make sure you are subscribed. Thank you, Annette, and everybody. I hope you all get out and have an amazing cult-free day.